All right, hello and welcome. This here is our first video of the year in pre-calculus. And today we're going to be talking about interval notation. So what exactly is interval notation? Interval notation is how, it's just a form that we use to describe a set of numbers. So you might be thinking to yourself, well, what is a set of numbers? And I wrote an example here, just x is greater than 3. It's the set of all real numbers that are greater than 3 in this case. So there's an infinite amount of numbers that fall in that set, right? 4, 5, 6, 3.01. We can name an infinite amount of numbers that fall in this set. And so now we want to be able to describe it in another way. Yeah, x is greater than 3 is awesome and that works. But we want to be able to use interval notation in order to describe that set. And so that's what we're going to learn today. We're actually going to learn that we would write it as 3 comma infinity with parentheses around it. And that's not a point. Don't worry, we're going to explain it, do a couple of examples, and I hope that you guys will be feeling strong with it by the end of this video. So how do we write an interval notation? How did I come up with parentheses 3 comma infinity parentheses? So whenever we're writing something in interval notation, it's always going to be lower bound, comma, the upper bound. So the lowest number that falls in the set, comma, the highest value that falls in the set. So lower bound, comma, upper bound. Again, this just means the lowest number. This right here is lowest number. And this right here is the highest number. Okay, so let's look back to this last example. We had x is greater than 3. Okay, x is greater than 3. Well, I know if I'm saying if I'm saying I have to be greater than 3, well, 3 is the absolute lowest that we could possibly go. Okay, so we have 3 as our lower bound in this case. And then, well, what's my upper bound? What's the highest I can go? Well, I can go way beyond 3, right? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It goes on for infinity. So the highest number we can actually go to now is infinity. So that's going to be my upper bound. And then we have parentheses around both of those. And now the question is, what does the parentheses mean? And when might we not have parentheses? Well, the parentheses means that we're not including the number. Okay, so the parentheses means we're not including. So not inclusive. Okay, we're not including the number 3. And what does that mean? Well, in x is greater than 3, right? If I just have a greater than sign, 3 is not greater than 3. So I can't include 3 in that set of numbers. So I'm just going to use parentheses as opposed to what we will see here, say it was x is greater than or equal to 3. Here, we are going to use a bracket instead. We are going to say, yes, we can include that value 3 now. And we're going to go all the way up to infinity. All right, so whenever we have brackets, that means inclusive. Okay, brackets means inclusive. So we include the 3. 3 is greater than or equal to 3 because, well, it's equal to. And now the question might be, well, why is there still parentheses around the infinity? Well, there's always going to be parentheses around both infinity and negative infinity. It's impossible to include infinity or negative infinity. Okay, so always parentheses around infinity or negative infinity. Because you can't include infinity. It's not really a true number. So always parentheses around or attached to negative infinity or positive infinity. Okay, positive or negative infinity. That's what I wrote right there. All right, so let's do a couple of examples now. All right, here I have 2 is less than or equal to x. That's also x is greater than or equal to 2. If it helps you guys, you can always throw it on a number line too. right? Just really simple. Say, all right, this is 2 here. Well, I fill in that circle, and then I'm going to the right. You might also see that as a bracket, and then filled into the right. Okay, so in this case, my lower bound, the lowest I can possibly go is 2. And that's also the furthest to the left on the number line, right? Furthest to the left. Well, I know as I go to the left, I get more and more negative, smaller and smaller, less and less. Okay, and the furthest to the right I can go, well, that's still infinity, so I'll keep it at infinity. Here, I have to be greater than -6, but less than or equal to 4. So here's 4, filled in circle, or you might see it as a bracket in a parentheses over here, and then we shade in between. All right, well, my lowest possible number is -6. My highest possible number is 4. And I don't include the -6, so I want parentheses. I do include the 4, so I'm going to have a hard bracket there. All right, and my final one, I have 5 is greater than r. Well, r in this case is less than 5, right? We could also say it as that. So we have an open circle at 5 or parentheses at 5. And now, well, what's my lower bound? Well, I know 5 is my upper bound, right? That's the highest that I can possibly go is 5, right? It's the furthest to the right on the number line I can go. So I'm going to put something comma 5, right? And what's the lowest I could go? Well, I'm not going to positive infinity, right? I'm going all the way down to negative infinity here. Always parentheses around negative infinity, and then we're not including the 5. So there's a few examples of interval notation right there. We have just one last thing to talk about quickly. Say we're combining 2 intervals. Okay, say that it could be this or it could potentially be that. If you remember some of these inequalities, we have an or sign in between, right? For example, maybe we have x is less than 1 or it's greater than 2, right? It could be any of those numbers. It just can't be between 1 and 2. Well, how are we going to do that? Let's look at this example here. X is less than -3 or x is greater than 2. Well, if I threw this on a number line, right? Here's my -3 here. Here's 2 here. I have an open circle and then to the left. I have an open circle and then to the right. Well, let's just practice writing each of these by itself. So I go from negative infinity all the way to -3, and it's not inclusive, so I'm going to have a parentheses there. Parentheses around the infinity, of course. And then for this second interval, well, 2 is my lower bound, and positive infinity is my upper bound. Parentheses around the infinity, and not including the 2, so also parentheses. And then simply to combine these guys, all we need to do is add a u between. This u stands for union, all right? So make sure you put that u between whenever you're combining 2 intervals. All right, and last one, this is just kind of a question for you guys to think about. How would we write all real numbers in interval notation? If you guys remember all real numbers, that's kind of our symbol for all real numbers. But how are we going to write this in interval notation? Well, what's the lowest I could possibly go? What's the highest I could possibly go? Right? I know, well, anything, right? I could go down to -1 billion and even beyond. So I could go all the way down to negative infinity. I could go all the way up to positive infinity. And obviously, I'm not including those. So all real numbers is just negative infinity to positive infinity in interval notation. Hope that this helped you guys out. And that it helps you out for the homework as well.